All right, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Bryan Frois, and I am the Senior Manager, and I lead corporate communications at the City of Markham. I also do strategic initiatives of the city and executive operations, leading those three files. Marco?
Hey, I'm Marco, also from Canada. Hello, everyone. I'm the Senior Advisor of Digital, so all the cool, innovative stuff. I try to share my opinions and convince the city to accept new projects. And we have three to talk about today.
So many of you probably are wondering, where is Markham, Ontario? You'll see the City of Toronto, the CN Tower at the top of the map there. We share the northern border with the City of Toronto. We're about 400,000 people, which is quite significant, very much like a mid-sized American city. Part of the greater region of Toronto, about 7 million people. Second largest tech city tech cluster in Canada, City of Markham, only second to the City of Toronto. The large multinationals that call our city home: Qualcomm, AMD, General Motors, Canadian Technical Center, working on autonomous vehicles, infotainment systems, as well as IBM is our big giant with the second largest global lab in the world, IBM lab in the world. And then we're developing an innovation district right now with a focus on semiconductor, onshoring semiconductor manufacturing into Canada and North America. It's just some awards that we've got recently, and fourth consecutive year WCCD Platinum certification from World Council on City Data. Now we're here to talk about what we've been doing with AI. Back in 2019, the mayor of our city, I was his former chief of staff before going on to the dark side of the public service. The city manager, the mayor, and I went to IBM and to the lab, and we said, well, what are you guys doing with artificial intelligence? They introduced us to Watson and Assistant for Citizens, and then the pandemic hit us in 2020. And we said, well, this is a perfect opportunity to work with IBM on a chatbot or something using AI to disseminate accurate information to our residents. One thing that we have to deal with, being a city of about 400,000 people in a big community like Toronto, is that the mainstream media very much focused on Toronto issues, where the public health units are based on county and region. So we had to make sure that our residents were getting localized information, and that was our responsibility to do that. And by developing a virtual assistant using Watson for Assistant for Citizens, we were able to do that. And Marco can share because he was on the implementation team.
Yeah, so like Bryan said, I led the implementation, which was interesting because I actually had zero skills with AI in 2020. But IBM was very helpful to us, and it leads me to this first bullet here. I like to break things down into buckets. So in terms of our development, there were four key areas. The first one is people. This is the most important. You need a good team to execute on the project. Internally, we didn't have the skill set to get this done, so it was important that we leveraged external members and made them temporary members of our team. And we really wanted to be hands-on, develop the core competencies to continue with these AI projects down the road. And we'll talk about the evolution of Watson within our city. But this was the first phase, and it was the most key, developing a cross-functional team. Next, as you guys have heard throughout this conference, data, super important. Identifying reliable sources and choosing the right data sets to train the Watson AI virtual assistant with. As Bryan talked about, the way the information is segregated, it can create overlaps or conflicting information, so we have to be very careful with that. Making a mistake, telling our residents the wrong things about COVID, especially during the peaks of the pandemic, would have been a disaster. Then it comes down to execution. So you have your tool. How do you actually get into the hands of the user base? In our case, our citizens. This is where we have to tap into our marketing team, make sure it was visible, accessible, and residents were aware of it. And after you've done all of that, you have to get to this last stage, which is adaptability. And this really is an ongoing thing. You're never really finished with an AI project. Things change. I'll give you one example. This is a word you probably haven't heard in a while, Omicron. People were using that interchangeably with COVID, but we realized our assistant just wasn't trained on that. It was a new term. No one heard of it before. So the bot was getting very confused trying to make sense of that. So we had to be very hands-on and retrain it as new terminology came out, and people were asking things in different ways. We can go to the next slide here. This is one of our marketing visuals. Our key phrase that we tried to sell the value of the tool to our residents with was a 24/7 support line, essentially. So we did have customer service staff, but they worked 9 to 5 during business hours. This extended our service lines to anytime, anywhere. You needed help, we had you covered. Now, when it comes to results, these are the criteria that I use to evaluate it. The first is external value. What did we do for our constituents? We provided them a 24/7 access to the latest pandemic information. Prior to the bot, there was a lot of confusion. People didn't know where to turn, and they felt like they were alone. This really filled the gap. Then we had some internal value. So our social media team, our contact center, they were able to deflect a lot of these questions and focus on more high-value things, using AI to augment their workload. They weren't answering basic Q&A questions anymore. They were able to go one step beyond and leave the simple things to the bot. Then you always need KPIs. So one that we were looking at was the number of messages that were processed. We actually processed over 42,000. That's from the start of the pandemic to the end. So a lot of questions were coming in and people were seeking information and help, and we delivered. And finally, we can't forget people. One thing I like to look at is relationships and how we built them. There has to be some human component in this relationship factor. And for us, it was including citizens, but also our tech partners. So on this next slide here, we continued to meet with IBM throughout and develop new competencies to brainstorm, and they would show us their latest tech, and that was really great. And Bryan will tell you more about how this meeting led to further developments with our Watson virtual assistant.
So some lessons learned from the chatbot 1.0, we call it, to the initial COVID-19 virtual assistant chatbot. The ability to control and curate what information is being shared with our residents, very important. What we know is that although many people are distrustworthy of federal or provincial governments, state governments, they actually show a lot of trust in their municipal governments. It's the government closest to them. And we had an obligation to make sure that we were utilizing any new technology to disseminate information that we could during this public health emergency.
Yes, and another key thing that we realized is that it takes a team with diverse skills to succeed. You can have the best engineering talent, you can have IBM on your side, but without the marketing folk, without the customer care folk, you're not going to create a holistic, successful solution. And you should also give yourself time to test things before you launch, but this one's a bit of a tricky thing because you don't want to take too long either. We're keen on the idea of failing fast, and I've heard that so many times actually from various speakers, so I'm happy that that sentiment is quite popular. There are many times where we put out the product and it wasn't exactly up to par, but it was good enough. I think being good enough combined with this idea of being able to pivot quickly is the sweet spot that you want to aim for.
So what we did next was we had a municipal election scheduled last year, 2022. Interesting enough, we're a city, very proud of our municipal innovation. We've had 6 municipal elections with online voting, first city in Canada to do that back in 2003. So we introduced our virtual assistant to share information on the municipal election last year and provide candidate information as well. And we also worked with Amazon Alexa as well for a smart speaker to give information to our residents using Amazon Alexa.
Okay, and here's our latest innovations where we've come to. We now have a virtual assistant 2.0. So keep in mind the evolution. It started with just COVID, went to elections, and we really saw there was uptake, almost 50,000 messages coming in from our citizens about various topics. So naturally, the next stage is to create a more general Markham bot. So we preloaded it with about 100 plus different topics. And we also added a feature where you could tell the bot, I want to speak to a human, and it would seamlessly connect you within the bot interface to one of our customer service agents. And we're seeing tremendous results, not only just on the AI front, but with our customer service team. Like I said, they're being freed up to focus on more challenging things that actually require human input, and the simpler questions, the bot's deflecting. We're actually seeing a deflection rate of about half. We're happy with that. You don't want everything to be deflected to the bot, and you also don't want it to be so low that it's hard to justify your investment. So it's an interesting number.
What we're doing next, we're already working on the 3.0 later this fall. What it's going to focus on is implementing a little bit more language tools to make sure that our residents can be communicated to in, non-bot language. We also, I should have mentioned, was 60% of our residents were not born in Canada. 40% of our residents identify as Chinese Canadian. We have a lot of languages spoken in our city, and we're going to make sure that the bot can communicate in many languages. At the same time, we want our bot to have a bit of a character, a personality to it. And so you're not looking at that M logo with the headset. We wanted to personalize it. We already have an existing mascot at the municipal level. This is a bit of a sneak preview. We're going to be introducing that mascot that we have for our city to be the face of our bot and give it more of a lighter touch. It's not the only thing we're doing with AI at the City of Markham. Our operations team now for a couple of years now we've had a partnership with Visual Defense, Rover Road Maintenance to detect road deficiencies on our roads. Our operations vehicles have cameras on them. They're roaming our streets all the time. They're picking up road deficiencies, as in potholes. You all hate potholes, so do we. The goal, fix that pothole before the resident has the ability to call it in and complain.
One more thing we're doing too is leveraging pecan.ai for some predictive analytics. We're still relatively early with this, but a couple of things we're exploring right now: ticket resolution times and optimizing our customer care department, snowplow tracking, even some stuff with maintenance like light bulbs, and water and wastewater usage. At the end of the day, the better we can predict future demand for various things like these, the better we can plan for ourselves and make sure there's no wastage and we're efficient with taxpayer dollars. Now, there are a couple challenges that we wanted to touch on briefly. The first one is keeping up with trends. There are micro and macro trends. A good example of micro trends is you can look at the way people are using your AI technology. The Omicron example comes to mind. The way language evolves or the ways in which people are asking things, those could change. You have to stay on top of that. And there are even macro changes. AI is shifting so rapidly. We never even heard the term predictive analytics like 2 years ago. Now it's a part of our core competencies and we're trying to expand on that. It's really important to stay on top of things. Personally, what I do is I follow a lot of personalities on Twitter. We listen to podcasts, read blogs, and stay connected with industry peers. And there's also something like AI expectation. So keep in mind, we launched our chatbot in 2020. That's before ChatGPT. So residents were very happy with it. They're like viewing this novel toy. Then ChatGPT came out and the bar got raised tremendously. People are expecting a lot more from these tools now. And also, it's such a short span of time. Within 2 years, they were just content with simple Q&A and some basic search functionality. Now they wanted to do everything. Then there's also the challenge of human power, making sure that staff feel that they're being supported by AI and not replaced. We feel like we're doing a great job of that. We're positioning people to optimize their schedules and their workflows. Focus on things that are more meaningful. You don't want to answer basic Q&As all day. So that's something we're looking at.
Some observations before we wrap up. One thing that private sector has I think, a bit of a harder time understanding is that municipalities, we don't have buckets of money. We have one taxpayer, and we get our revenue from property taxes, mostly in Canada especially. So we're working on these projects on the side of our desk because we want to be able to keep taxes low, pretty much at inflation. And what we've noticed is that sometimes these private corporations are coming to us. They want access to our infrastructure to study, and also to see how their private enterprises can innovate using our infrastructure. It's important to set clear expectations with the municipality. If you're going to be using our assets, then there needs to be some sort of thing that the municipality will get out of that. What we're finding is that by not setting those clear expectations from the get-go, they're using our assets. At the end of it, we're not reaping the benefits. So ensure cities, municipalities, local governments who are already doing this to create smart cities are well compensated for access into their infrastructure. And that's our presentation. If we have time, happy to take any questions you have.